In this final video of Section 5, we're going to prepare our newly built Windows 7 virtual desktop machine for delivery to the end users. So what are we going to learn in this video? First of all, we're going to create a template of the Windows 7 image. This will then be used to create full clone desktops in a persistent desktop pool. Next, we will create a snapshot of the image that will be used to create linked clone desktops from, with the desktops then being part of a non-persistent desktop pool. Then finally, we will just make a copy or a clone of the virtual desktop machine, which will then be used to create a manual desktop pool. So now we've created our Windows 7 virtual desktop machine. We've created the hardware, we've created the operating system itself, VMware tools, it's been optimized, the agent installed, and it's all cleaned up, ready to go. It's a perfect gold image ready to be deployed to our end users. So the next step is to actually create the desktop pools, and before we do that, we need to put the image in a state ready for Horizon to deliver. Now, there's several different options available to do this, and those options depend on how you are going to deliver the desktop. And by how, I mean if it's going to be linked clone, instant clone, full clone, or even a manual desktop. To each one of those, the image needs to be prepared slightly differently. So the first one we're going to look at is for linked clones. Linked clones require a snapshot. So therefore, the first thing we need to do is create a snapshot of our Windows 7 gold image. So to do that, from our vSphere client, we're going to highlight the machine, we're going to right click, we're going to choose snapshots, and we're going to say take snapshot. So now we see the take snapshot window. First thing we need to do is give it a name. So we'll call this Windows 7 gold image snapshot. We can give it a description if you want. This is optional. So we'll call this gold build 1.0, and then we'll say OK. So that now will create our snapshot. So when we go back in to the machine, into snapshots, manage snapshots, we will see that snapshot there, and that's our gold build version 1.0. So when you go into the Horizon administrator, when you're creating the desktop pool and selecting the image, it will ask you to point to the snapshot for the virtual machine from which you want to create the linked clones from, i.e. you point at this snapshot. If you want to make some changes, you can change some things in the image itself, maybe install a new app, maybe it's a new patch, new update. Take another snapshot, maybe call that one version 2.0, go back to Horizon admin console, do a recompose, and when we do the recompose, point to the new snapshot. But don't delete the old one. Just in case something goes wrong, you might want to roll back and go back to the old snapshot and recompose from the old snapshot with the image that you know works. So that's the first method, and this is for our linked clone desktops. It's also exactly the same for instant clones. If we're building an instant clone desktop pool, we would do exactly the same. So we just click done on there to close that, and then look at one of the other options. And this is for full clones. So when we build a full clone desktop pool in the Horizon administrator, now it's going to ask you for a template file. So we need to create a template file. To do that, from our vSphere client, we're going to choose the image again. So we always start at the same point, which is our gold image. This time we're going to choose clone, and this time we're going to clone to a template. So now we see our clone virtual machine to template. So first of all, we need to give it a template name. So we will call this our Windows 7 gold image template. We need to select a location for this to be stored. This is going to be our PVO data center. So click next to continue. And then we need to select the compute resource that's going to run it. So that's our Horizon cluster and our host with the IP address 131. So we select that, next to continue, and now we have our select storage screen. So first of all, select virtual disk format. So we can keep it the same as the source, or we can thick provision it, or thin provision. So we're going to go for thin provision for this particular machine. We also have the VM storage policy here, so we can keep the VM storage policies the same, or we can apply the default data store policies, encryption, vSAN, or virtual volumes policies. So we'll just leave that as our existing VM storage policies. Then we need to select the data store to store it. Where's the virtual disk file is going to live? That's on our VM data store. So once you've configured these options, next to continue. And now we see our summary screen. What are we going to do? So we're going to provision, and we're going to do a clone virtual machine to a template. We're going to use the Windows 7 gold image as our source virtual machine, and from it we're going to create a template called Windows 7 gold image template. It's in the folder that's PVO data center running on the host with the IP 131, stored in the VM data store using the same format as the source disk storage. So if you're happy with that, we click finish, and now we will go ahead and build that template, and you'll see that appear here. So now we have a template file. So when we go into our view administrator, when we build our virtual desktop pool and we asked for the template, we can point at this particular template file. Again, if you make changes to this image, you will need to make another template to build the machines from. One final option we're just going to quickly look at is if you want to create a manual desktop pool, i.e. an individual machine. Maybe it's an admin desktop you want to build and have your own dedicated machine that's not a full clone. You just want to take a copy of the image. Maybe it's for some testing or to take it somewhere and do some work on it to build a new image. Then what we can do is just create a manual desktop pool so you can create and connect direct to it. So to do that, highlight the image again. We're going to right click. This time we're going to go for clone, and this time the option for clone to virtual machine. So now we see the clone existing virtual machine. So what are we going to call it? So we're going to call this Windows 7 manual desktop. So we know exactly what it is. It's going to live in our PVO data center, and it's going to run on our ESX host 131. Next to continue. And now where is it going to live on the storage? So again, select virtual disk format. So we can keep it the same. We can thick provision or thin provision. So we thin provision this. And we can also change the VM storage policy, virtual volumes, virtual SAN, VM encryption, data store, or as I said, we'll keep existing VM storage policies. It's going to live on our VM data store. We click next to continue. And now we have another option. So this option is our customization, if you like. So do we want to customize the operating system when we build the machine? If you check the box, then we see another option appear, and that's our customize OS. So if we clicked next now we could go and choose a customization file that exists on our vCenter server. So we could go in and maybe change the SID, change the network, make some settings changes to the virtual desktop machine, run some scripts on it, or whatever that might be. If we just go back for a second, we take that off, and if we go to customize this virtual machine's hardware, as there is experimental, we see another option pop here, customize hardware. So when we do next now, we will see the configure the virtual machine hardware window, the same as when we built the virtual machine in the first place. So that means by creating a manual pool, I could actually change the hardware of the machine. So maybe I only want one CPU now, or maybe I want to increase the memory, or change some other aspects, add a new device, or whichever that might be. So I could actually change the hardware configuration. Just watch out when you do things like going from single CPU to multi-CPU, that the operating system is happy for you to do that. Otherwise it might not boot. If we just go back from there, the other option we've got here is to power on the virtual machine once it's created. So as soon as we build it, it gets powered on. So choose your options there, and once you've done all those, click next to continue, and then we see our summary screen. So what are we going to build? So we're going to provision, and it's going to be a clone of an existing virtual machine. That existing virtual machine is our Windows 7 gold image. We're always going to start from that point. That's our master image, which we always refer back to. We're going to create a new machine called Windows 7 manual desktop. We're going to put it in the PVO data center. It's going to run on host 131. Virtual disk file stored in VM data store using the same disk storage format as the source. So if you're happy with that, we click finish. And then we will see manual desktop appear in our inventory on our vSphere client. So now we have successfully completed our Windows 7 provisioning tasks. In the next video, we're going to build a second virtual desktop gold image, this time using Windows 10 as the operating system.